Alright, so I know there's a lot of popular ships out there in Ace Attorney. You lovely people have even recommended me some. However, I'm going to take a look at all of those ships, and then I'm going to put them gently to the side, because over the last 6 months I've slowly devolved into rare pair brain rot that has kind of been taking over my life. So if this video is not in any way coherent, I deeply apologize. Personally, I am beyond rescuing, but also my goal is to take as many people down with me as I possibly can, so sorry, but not really sorry, I guess. If you saw the title of this video and thought, what the hell is Dougnix? And then immediately afterwards thought, wait, is that Doug Swallow and Phoenix Wright? You would be correct. If you only thought, what the hell is Dougnix, and just kind of stopped there, then you know what, valid, and I respect you. But because I don't respect myself, let's dive right into this, shall we? This is your obligatory fair warning that from here on out there will be spoilers for Ace Attorney 3 Trials and Tribulations. So at this point you might pull me aside and say to me, Dagar, isn't this just classic fandom MLM brain rot? Pairing up any man who so much as talks to, or looks at, or stands close to another man together. Because, let's face it, Doug is already dead by the time we meet him. He only has like 6 canon lines that he says to Phoenix, not that I'm counting. And to that I say, okay, maybe. But also not really, because thinking about the possibility of Doug Swallow and Phoenix Wright being together in any sort of canon-compliant capacity means that we have to analyze Phoenix's reactions in turnabout memories under an entirely new lens that puts a fun twist on sexuality headcanons, and also Phoenix's character trajectory over the course of the entire Ace Attorney timeline. And by fun twist, I actually mean incredibly painful, and so with that I would like to mention another content warning here for internalized homophobia and compulsory heterosexuality, both of which are no joke. So, canon-compliant Dougnix really only works in one of 2 ways. 1, if they had dated each other before either of them dated Dahlia and now they're hostile exes, which is objectively hilarious, or 2, if they never dated at all actually, and if Phoenix is gay, doesn't even realize it himself, and experiences the aforementioned internalized homophobia as a result of compulsory heterosexuality. Which is a lot less funny and a lot more tragic, which means we're going to focus on that one. And I'm saying there are really only these 2 options for canon-compliant Dougnix because Phoenix is incredibly mean to Doug throughout his entire trial. Like, look at this. Sir, a man just died. Literally. He died trying to warn you. What is your problem? Phoenix's behavior in the trial, including the unwarranted hostility towards Doug, who, as a reminder, is a man who is dead and who Phoenix has been accused of murdering, and his over-the-top defense of his girlfriend Dolly, who has definitely not been trash-talking Phoenix almost directly to his face during the whole trial, could be interpreted as Phoenix being true to his usual loyal and trusting self. However, it could also be interpreted as Phoenix trying to fall back into the questionable comfort of compulsory heterosexuality, which he might not even understand that he's forcing himself into at this point. And don't get me wrong, I love bi Phoenix headcanons. I myself am also bi. But it's also just a little interesting that Phoenix has still been studying to be a lawyer throughout the duration of his relationship with Dahlia/Iris, indicating that he's been pursuing Edgeworth that whole time. Which, sure, you do you, dude. But, as I've pointed out before, kinda weird to change the course of your life for your childhood friend, who you were only friends with for less than a year in elementary school, and who looks tragically sad and handsome on the cover of a magazine. Anyway, so assuming that Phoenix is gay, with perhaps an unacknowledged crush on his girlfriend's ex-boyfriend, while desperate to convince himself that he's not gay at all actually, and also not responsible for the murder of his not crush, this trial really changes a lot actually. It certainly is a love triangle, but perhaps not in the way that you're thinking of, Mr. Judge. Phoenix starts the trial right off the bat lying about not having known Doug at all, which Mia proves is ridiculous because how could Phoenix have known that Doug was a British wannabe if he didn't know him at all? Who accuses strangers of that? The answer is no one, Phoenix! He also tries to bullshit some excuse about it being because Doug wears the Union Jack on the back of his shirt, but Mia points out that Phoenix couldn't have seen the Union Jack because Doug was wearing a jacket over it. which implies that Phoenix must have seen it elsewhere, which further implies that he had met Doug before, or at the very least, seen him around campus. Unfortunately, this contradiction isn't explored much further beyond this, so the question of how Phoenix knew Doug wore the Union Jack and under what circumstances they may have met before still remains. So, okay, this is hardly conclusive evidence that they somehow knew each other beforehand. But it's kind of suspicious when paired with how much Phoenix seems to know about Doug and his academic career. How does this art major know about this random pharmacology major? I don't know about you all, but I barely knew my classmates in college, much less some randos in a whole other department. But sure, Phoenix. Everyone called him the alchemist of IVU. Phoenix continues to be contradictory when testifying about his interactions with Doug. It's like, do you hate this guy or what? If so, why do you know so much about him? This weird dynamic comes into question numerous times, most notably when Mia asks Phoenix why he returned to the crime scene if he was so angry with Doug in the first place. Phoenix initially claims that he wanted to make up, whatever that entails, but then later states 3 separate times that it's because he was worried about Doug. This seems to be the truth in any case, since it's never refuted or discussed further. And I'm glad that Phoenix was worried about this supposed stranger who he so rudely shoved despite purportedly never having met him before. Because I, too, go around getting into arguments with strangers to the point of physical violence and then change my mind and come back to apologize and repair a non-existent relationship. I guess now is as good a time as any to jump into the compulsory heterosexuality, or comphet, piece of this mess. Phoenix's reaction to Doug's warning about Dahlia is, frankly, shockingly aggressive. Again, if we're taking what Phoenix said at face value, he and Doug are practically strangers. Then why does Phoenix get so angry here? Why does he refuse to even consider the possibility that Doug's warning might be in good faith? The answer, I argue, is comphet. Phoenix's excessive defensiveness of Dahlia can be seen throughout the entire case as well, where he's constantly espousing her perfection, claiming her innocence, and gushing about how she's the love of his life, after which he immediately talks about Miles Edgeworth, but I digress. Again, this could be interpreted as simply a love-struck and hopelessly naive man protecting his loved one, but one of the ways in which comphet is so insidious is that it makes you trick yourself into believing that you're #straight, actually. If we view Phoenix's behavior in this trial through the lens of a gay man experiencing comphet, then the stubbornness and the over-the-top declarations of love begin to sound more and more like someone who's desperately trying to classify their feelings towards someone of a different gender as romantic, within the strictest, most socially acceptable interpretation of heterosexuality. Which, honestly, I can't really blame him. At this point in the trial, he's practically lost everything. He's already basically put 2 and 2 together by the time he swallows the necklace, which appears to be a last-ditch attempt to prove Dahlia's innocence, and perhaps also absolve himself of any lingering guilt from being tangentially involved in Doug's death. Adding a sexuality crisis on top of all that is kind of the last thing he needs right now. You know, that feel when you could have maybe prevented your not crush's death if you had just figured out you were gay sooner and broken up with your girlfriend who kept asking for that necklace she gave you because she was only dating you to hide the evidence of her attempted murder crimes and then was plotting to kill you for it. Oh, and also, your shove is what created the opportunity for the murder of your not crush in the first place. Yeah, I'd repress that shit too. Anyway, Capcom really said Dougnix canon. Compliant. And if you're still not convinced, may I present to you Exhibit A. Phoenix certainly has a type, doesn't he? The possibilities for canon-compliant Dougnix are not endless, as I've explained earlier, but certainly very interesting. I personally am partial to a rivals to almost lovers slow burn backstory featuring one extremely confusing kiss after which Doug dies. Fun! So, am I just reaching with this rare pair, or is there some basis here? I'll leave that up to you to decide and to judge my fate accordingly. But I will say this. Comphet Gay Phoenix is a really interesting headcanon to explore, especially in the context of his canon interactions with both Dahlia and Doug. Also, I will never be able to play this case the same way ever again.